This is a Fox News alert. There is breaking news in the case of the Australian woman shot to death by a police officer in Minneapolis after calling 911 to report a crime. Fox Minneapolis reporter Christina Palladino joins us with details. Christina.
Tucker, this is the alleyway here in southwest Minneapolis where 40-year-old Justine Damon was shot and killed by a Minneapolis police officer. She was shot just a few doors down from her home on Saturday night. We understand that Damon was calling to report a possible assault happening in this alleyway. Now, we just got an update from the state agency investigating. They tell us that the two officers were patrolling in their car with their lights off when Damon came out of nowhere and startled both of them. We understand that 31-year-old officer Mohammed Noor was in the passenger seat. He is the one who shot Damon in the abdomen. She died on scene. Investigators say she did not have a weapon on her, and the body cameras of the police officers, as well as their squad camera video, were not turned on. Now, Damon, she moved here from Sydney, Australia 3 years ago to be with her fiance. She was set to marry him next month in Hawaii.
We've lost the dearest of people, and we're desperate for information. Piecing together Justine's last moments before the homicide would be a small comfort as we grieve this tragedy. The death of Justine is a loss to everyone who knew her. She touched so many people with her loving and generous heart.
Now, Noor has apparently refused to be interviewed by state investigators. The other officer, Matthew Harity, has already sat down with detectives. Noor has been on the force for about 2 years. He's the first Somali-American police officer to be in this precinct, but he already has 3 citizen complaints filed against him. One was closed without discipline. The other 2 remain open, and we are attending a press conference in the next few minutes to hear from the assistant chief, the mayor, and other council members as well. Tucker?
Thanks, Dr. Christina. We appreciate it. Well, there's a lot going on in the story and a lot we don't know. Mohammed Noor was an immigrant from Somalia. Is that a relevant fact? We don't know. But it's being treated as one by many news organizations. How do you know that? Because they're not reporting it. The Washington Post, for example, did a long piece on this shooting and made no mention of Noor's nationality or immigration status. They never even mentioned his name. They wrote an entire story about this and never mentioned the cop's name. Why is that? Vincent Hill is a former Nashville police officer, and he joins us. Mr. Hill, thanks for coming on tonight. So it seems odd. A bunch of things about this seem odd to me, and maybe they're significant and maybe not. First, how common is it for a police officer to shoot someone through the door of a vehicle?
Well, Tucker, thanks for having me on. It's very uncommon for a police officer to shoot outside of a vehicle from the inside. Most departments forbid it. So I question what made this officer, Officer Noor, believe that there was an imminent threat against either his life or his partner's life to shoot 3 times inside that vehicle and strike Ms. Dedman. I really question that.
It seems bizarre. Now, the second notable fact, it seems to me, is the body cams and the dash cam. So at least 3 cameras present, none of them on, either during the shooting, before the shooting, during the shooting, or after the shooting. Why would that be?
Well, Tucker, I don't want to speculate. There could be several reasons. Of course, body cams in general are very new to most police departments across this country. I believe Minneapolis have only been using body cams for about a year. So when officers are approaching a scene of a call, they have a lot that they're thinking about. It could be that the body cam was not one of those. I don't know why the dash cam, if it was available, wasn't on, because, of course, you're responding to a crime or reports of a crime. So
Yes.
at least the dash cam in itself should have been on.
Now, I always give cops the benefit of every doubt because it's a really hard job and a dangerous job. And so maybe this isn't meaningful, but you tell me what you think. This guy had been on the force for 2 years. He had 3 complaints against him. Does it seem like a lot?
For someone to have only been on a department for 2 years, it definitely seems like a lot, especially the last one, I believe, was this past May. So here we are just 2 months removed from that, and now a young lady is dead, and it's very tragic. So I really question what those reports actually said Was it something that the department should have said, hey, maybe this officer is not fit for duty? So you have to question that.
Yeah, you certainly do. Can you, and again, there's a lot we don't know, and I can't stand it when people speculate irresponsibly. But since you've done this job, can you think of a scenario in which what happened or what we know happened makes sense?
Tucker, I've thought about this all day, and the only thing I can speculate from an officer point of view is there was something that made that officer believe there was an imminent threat against his life. I think there's reports now that there may have been a loud noise by the vehicle. There's reports that she startled these officers, but we have to take into account they received the call that a female was probably being sexually assaulted. So
right.
Common sense should kick in and say, well, is this possibly the victim, or is this the 911 caller? I know when I've answered 911 calls, I always wanted to speak to the caller to get their perspective,
right,
to see if there's a suspect, to see if we need to set up a perimeter. So I don't understand what led this officer to believe not only did he have to take her life, but if you think about it, he put his partner's life in jeopardy by shooting across him.
It's unbelievable. I mean, whatever he thought, he cannot have imagined this was the perpetrator in a sexual assault. You wouldn't think, but who knows? Vincent, thanks a lot for that. It was really helpful.
Tucker, thank you so much.
Another deadly police shooting, this time in Minneapolis. Justine Damon, a bride-to-be, called 911 Saturday night to report a possible assault in an alley near her home. Minutes later, she was shot to death by a police officer. We're learning more tonight about what happened, but there are still far more questions than answers. Joining me now to discuss from Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, the lead reporter on the story, Andy Mannix. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about this because the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, the Bureau there of Criminal Apprehension, released new details tonight. What can you tell us?
Yeah, you know, there's still, I think, a big appetite for an explanation that kind of helps us make sense of it. What we were able to find out today was, you know, in some sense confirming what we had already gotten from sources over the past couple days, but just giving us sort of a skeleton, you know, chain of events that happen, which is basically Justine, this woman, calls 911. She believes there's possibly an assault taking place near her home. The officers show up. We're a little bit unclear, but there was a loud noise. It might have been fireworks. It might have been something else. But it put them on edge. And then suddenly, you know, the woman, Justine, comes up to the vehicle, to the driver's side, and the passenger, Officer Noor, shoots out the window, so across from, you know, kind of across his partner, and hits her in the abdomen, and she died on the scene.
Unbelievable. And officers, they're looking to talk to a man on a bike, right?
Yeah, it's a little unclear. You know, there just aren't really many witnesses. You know, we have the officer, Harity, we have the officer who shot, and we have the woman who's dead. There was a guy, so they're looking for any witnesses.
Okay.
There was a guy who came by on a bicycle, but unclear how much of it he actually saw. But so they're trying to track him down just because that's the only other person they know of that was in the area.
And the officers we know did not have their body cameras on. The squad camera was off as well. I mean, what is standard procedure in Minnesota? What should have happened?
Yeah, it's unclear. You know, when there are certain incidents, for example, if they're doing a traffic stop, making an arrest, where they would have to have their body cameras on. In this situation, they're in the car. There's a little bit more discretion, but they can turn them on when it's appropriate. You know, you think if an officer is drawing his gun, that's a situation that you're gonna wanna, you know, you're gonna wanna record. That's what the body cameras are for. So, you know, unclear exactly if policy was broken, but certainly a lot of questions about whether or not they were following procedure.
So take us there. What's the reaction like? I know we see family and friends and holding press conferences, and they're sad and grieving, but what's the reaction like from the community?
Like I said, just, you know, a lot of people that are angry, you know, curious on what happened. I mean, on its face, you know, we got some more information today, but we really didn't have much to go on for these first few days. Not a lot from law enforcement. So, you know, on its face, you have a woman who calls police because she thinks a crime is occurring, and they show up and shoot her and kill her. That sends a very troubling message to law-abiding citizens. So, you know, people, I think, are really trying to make sense of that. Some other context is this, you know, we had the shooting of Philando Castile in Minneapolis, well, right outside Minneapolis in the suburb, different police department. That was, your viewers may remember that because the passenger, his girlfriend, Facebook streamed a lot of that, kind of the aftermath. So that officer actually was charged with the crime, went to trial, and was acquitted just a few weeks ago. Before that, we had, this is going on about a year and a half ago now, a guy named Jamar Clark, unarmed black man, shot by Minneapolis police and killed. So, that was in that case, no charges for the officers. But, all of these sort of have created a response where community members are questioning the police, questioning use of force, questioning training. So for this to come in such a short time period from those other incidents, a lot of strained relationships, I think, between law enforcement, city officials, and the community. What
can you tell us about Officer Mohammed Noor, the one involved in this shooting? He's been with the department, I understand, for 21 months?
Yeah, so, fairly new to the department, 31 years old. He's Somali. I'm not sure exactly, was he born here or if he, I believe, maybe came here as a young man. But very much celebrated for diversity in the department. As far as we know, he was a good police officer. He had a few open complaints against him with internal affairs, but no discipline on any of those, no resolution. Yeah. There was a lawsuit against him related to an incident where he detained someone and brought her to a hospital, but no resolution on that either. So none of these we can really draw too much conclusion. It's not like he has this long history of being violent or anything like that that we're at least that we are aware of or that we can confirm.
Andy Mannix from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to bring in now CNN legal analyst Mark OMara, CNN contributor Wes Lowery, the author of They Can't Kill Us All, Ferguson, Baltimore, and a New Era in America's Racial Justice Movement, and then former LAPD officer David Klinger, the author of Into the Kill Zone. It's so good to have all of you on. I mean, where do we start, Mark? Why do you think there is such a lack of transparency around this case?
Well, in one sense, I'm okay with them doing the job properly because although we in the media want to hear every snippet we get, the investigation needs to be done in a good way. So I'm okay with them being circumspect as to what they're letting out. Having just said that, I'm getting frustrated that now they are starting to let out these snippets, that there was a noise. I even saw a report that one of the officers was, quote, startled by it. I don't like the fact that it's being left out in snippets, but I'm much more concerned with what seems to be an obvious violation of their policy because, Don, you and I have talked many, many times about the need for body cameras, and it is unconscionable that neither officer nor had their body cameras on, nor the dash cam was rolling, because at the very least, they were coming into a situation at night where they were looking into a potential sexual assault. We should have had body cameras on, and this now needs to stand as a case to show every cop should have a body camera and every cop should have it on when they're interacting with the public, because at least then we would have some evidence, not just the officer's interpretation.
I see you nodding your head there, Wes. I mean, why wouldn't these cameras be operating, especially considering what we've been dealing with for the past couple years, 5 or so years in this country, at least what's been in the news?
Of course. Now it's hard in part, as Mark says, because we know so little, right? We're kind of reading tea leaves based on statements that the police have put out, based on statements they've gotten from one of the two officers, right? And so the precision with which we understand even what was going on or was not, we honestly don't have it yet. I can foresee, or I can understand why perhaps, depending on what these officers had been told via the dispatcher, why they may not have, if this call had come into them as we've got a complaint, someone thinks they're hearing something outside, why they might not have their body cameras on yet, why their dashboard cameras in some departments activate when you hit the, when you're hitting the flashing lights, why they might not be running. This is something that a lot of police unions and officers talk a lot about when exactly are these cameras supposed to be on versus when they are not. Obviously, we know now there was a use of force, but I would assume both officers were not necessarily expecting to suddenly have to use force, or that one of the officers would. But that, it speaks to some of the difficulty with body cameras. cameras. We've seen the preponderance of body cameras. Thousands of departments starting to use body cameras in the years since Ferguson, Missouri, since 2014. But what we've yet to see is, a full set of best practices about exactly how they should be used, when they should be used, and even beyond that, even had there been camera in this case, there's huge questions about whether or not the public or the family would have been able to see it.
And maybe they should be turned on automatically. If they should be triggered by something automatically.
Policy
right?
suggesting it.
Yeah. David, what did you say? I'm sorry, Mark. What did you say? The policy?
Well, they have a policy in place, and the policy suggests that in an event which could become critical, that you should use it. A traffic stop, for example. So I would think that if a traffic stop is enough to suggest that a camera should be turned on, then an event where you're showing up at night to a complaint of a potential event, there's no reason not to have it on. And at the very least, they were poorly trained. And I must say one other thing. Officer Noor is going to be looked at very closely. And if he happens to be, not suggesting he is, but if he happens to be an officer who has not properly utilized his camera like he was supposed to, because we now know how often officers are supposed to use their cameras, and it's going to be really questionable, both him and other officers. This needs to be a learning point for officers that when they have cameras, they have to use them.
Okay. David, I want to get your response. I have a couple questions for you. What's your response to this? What do you think?
Well, real quickly, I basically agree with the notion that body cameras are a good thing, so on and so forth. However, one of the key issues that people don't seem to think about is the issue of the privacy rights of citizens, and that is something that bothers me. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you think about it, if you're a police officer getting a call to a sexual assault, and you see a female flagging you down potentially, maybe this is my sexual assault victim. I don't want my body camera on because I don't want to get that information that then a FOIA request comes out and someone has access to that. So maybe that could be an explanation. Now, the shooting is a whole other thing, and I have a whole lot of problems with a lot of things going on with that, but there could be a legitimate reason for not having the body camera activated. Then the second thing is I have colleagues around the country that are doing studies, federally funded studies on body cameras, and we know that it's taken a little time for officers with that learning curve to know when they should turn it on, when to turn it off, so on and so forth. And so I agree with Mark's point that this should be an example of, hey, we really need to think more thoroughly about this and get officers on the ball a little bit more rapidly.
Mark disagrees with at least part of what you're saying, and we'll hear from him on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
Sure.
And we're back now with my panel. David Klinger was making a point about the body cameras, and Mark, do you disagree with him about that?
Well,
I think he was saying about privacy of a rape victim or assault victim?
And I certainly understand it. There are a couple of logistic problems with body cameras. One is storage. It's an enormous amount of data. And then redaction, because some criminal defense attorney like me is going to make a request to get it, and then the police have to go through the process of redaction. So I understand the logistical concerns. I disagree with David if he's saying that an officer can somehow make this determination that I may be coming upon a sexual assault event and may not want to turn my camera on. Those cameras are now the standard for retention of evidence. It should be on at any time they're going to interact with the public. And granted, David, I agree. If in fact it catches something of a victim of a sexual assault, so be it. But that's not the right basis to say we're not going to retain the evidence. That can be protected, but it needs to be retained first.
As long as there are statutory provisions in the state where the officers are working, where it can be redacted, I agree with you. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But yeah. I've responded to 3 or 2, depending on how you want to count them, rapes in progress as a young police officer many years ago. And I remember those 3 cases very vividly. And none of those 3 women wanted to have anyone see them in the conditions that I and my fellow officers found them in. And so I'm very sensitive to that point.
Agree, but as law enforcement and knowing that you have to prove that case in front of a jury, having that video is significant evidence that would help a conviction.
Yeah, and Wes,
I don't disagree, and I don't want to get too far afield with the body camera stuff because I think it's a little bit of a red herring versus the core issue of the use of deadly force.
Which is right, exactly, which is what I want to talk to Wes about here. Because before I get to Wes, just real quickly, David, you can weigh in because I want to hear from him as well. This guy shot. The officer is accused of shooting across his partner sitting in the passenger seat. Under any circumstances, and you train officers, you would not train officers to do that, would you?
Well, there would always be a very narrow window where one officer could shoot across the body of another. but once again, very narrow. But this doesn't seem in any way, shape, or form to fit that. And so it's one of those things. Would never say never. But as soon as I heard he shot across his partner, I'm thinking, this is just beyond bizarre.
And Wes, the shooting is making the front page headlines, and it's stirring outrage. I mean, Australia and across the world. Not surprising considering the circumstances.
No, not at all. I mean, the reality is you've got 2 to 3 fatal police shootings each day. I think this is the 547th of this year. But there are certain cases that obviously draw attention, obviously draw headlines, right? And they begin with people who are unarmed, right? We very often look to see, was this person armed?
10 seconds,
they have a weapon?
Wes.
Obviously not. Is it a woman? You know, this is one of only 24 women shot and killed by the police. It's completely understandable why there's so much attention being given to this case, although, again, it obviously is not the only fatal police shooting this year.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.